I will say officially welcome to the first Bay Delta Trust community call. This is a really exciting moment for me. I've been talking to many of you on this call over the last 6, 8, 9 months about bioregionalism and coming home to our natural world and re-inhabiting the place where we live and what that could look like long term as far as new ways to work together and coordinate and govern ourselves in alignment with life and in service of all. So this is the first of a monthly series of calls to explore what that looks like together in community and partnership. I would love for all of us to start by putting our name in the chat and where you're from, but I would love for you, if you know, to put the indigenous territory where you live. If you don't know where that is, there is a really wonderful map called Native Land Digital. I just put it in the chat, and you can find where you live there. And I'm going to put in the chat, again, my name is Lawrence, and I live, like Kevin, in unceded Coast Miwok territory in the modern town of San Rafael on the bay. And yeah, so we're going to have lots of time to talk with each other and get to know each other. The way this call is going to work, it's going to be about so we're going to do some, actually, let me share some my slides and we'll and I can get into the agenda. Before I get into agenda, does everybody have their access needs met? Can everybody hear and see okay? Okay, and if you don't, here, I'm going to just do a visual scan to make sure everyone is, all right, fantastic. So, our agenda for the day is to talk about bioregionalism and why now, and what is this idea of a Bay Delta Trust. I want to spend some time getting to know each other, and we'll do a small group exercise, a little bit of a reflection on what you heard, but also talking about our place, our home, and what's important to us. And then we'll get into bioregional asset mapping, and this timing is not right, actually, but we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and discussion. So I'd like to leave at least half an hour at the end for us to just talk and for us to reflect on what we just heard. I am planning for 90 minutes, so please stick around for as long as you can. I'll record this and share it afterwards, and the conversation continues, and this will be a monthly meeting so that there's going to be plenty of opportunities to plug in. So with that, I just wanted to start with a pretty inspirational quote, one that I think about a lot and have thought about ever since I was introduced to Buckminster Fuller. You never change the things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. All right, how's that look? Is that a little bit better with the full screen?
It's better.
Oops. Yeah, sorry. When I'm doing that, it's let's do present review. Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Good.
It looks good.
Great. So yeah, you never change things by where did you go? By fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So for me, that's inspiring because there are many things about the existing model that don't make me very happy, and I think we can all say lead to a lot of suffering in the world. And so to think about what it would look like to have an alternative model, a plan B, if you will, gives us some agency and some hope about bringing the change we want to see in the world. So thank you, Bucky, for guiding us in that regard. One of the models that I've been thinking a lot about that gives me hope about this new reality and a new model or system to step into, given all the challenges with our current institutions and systems, is bioregionalism. And If you're not familiar with bioregions and bioregionalism, bioregion is shorthand for a biocultural region. A bioregion reflects natural boundaries, such as watersheds, mountain range, or ecological zones, rather than abstract political borders. And one of the things I really love about bioregionalism is that it emphasizes the interconnectedness of all life and promotes the idea that humans really need to adapt our lifestyles and practices to align with the specific ecological characteristics of their home bioregion. So the way we live here in our Mediterranean climate in California, the coastal California, is going to be very different than people would live in other bioregions around the world. Um, and bioregionalism then is basically kind of the operationalization of the notion of bioregions, but a philosophy or even a way of life, or hopefully a model of governance that connects people and ideas into place, watershed by watershed, in ways that are sustainable, democratic, and just. Bioregionalism is having a moment right now. There's a lot of efforts happening around the world to explore what bioregionalism looks like in their home. And I'm excited to explore what it looks like in our home bioregion, which is the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento San Joaquin Delta, otherwise known as the Bay Delta. This is one map that I've found of the bioregion. It's huge. It stretches from the headwaters of the Sacramento River at the foot of Mount Shasta all the way up the top of California, all the way down to the bottom of the San Joaquin Valley. This is the footprint of all the water that flows into the Sacramento River and San Joaquin River watersheds and tributaries into the Delta and then into the bay and out into the ocean. It's large, and here's another look. I've been doing some mapping. This is a map I created from the GIS watershed boundary database. And you can see how the outline of the bioregion maps to the existing counties. So that's a lot of counties. Um, and it can feel a little overwhelming. It certainly is a large area, but there's also lots of subunits within this bioregion, which give us the ability to be a little closer to our home and our home watershed. So this is that same bioregional shapefile or boundary, but with it are watershed regions that are you could consider subunits. So kind of like counties are the abstract political boundaries. There are boundaries or subunits within a bioregion. And I think over time, how we coordinate across these watersheds and how do we get to know sort of the capacity and strengths, but also the weaknesses and liabilities of each of these areas is part of the process of learning about our home, the Bay Delta bioregion. I won't spend too much time on this. You're all here probably because you understand that we are at a moment of incredible crisis on the planet. However you want to talk about it, the polycrisis, the crisis of crises, but really we're at a moment where humanity needs to realign our systems and institutions with the natural world upon which we all depend. And the way that we've been approaching these crises through arbitrary political boundaries and systems that are really not reflective of ecological values and truths is not helping us. So bioregions, again, areas defined by ecological and biocultural characteristics, provide the right scale, hopefully, for new governance and economies to empower thriving, resilient communities. How do we do that? Well, if we start with the sort of assumption that we have a crisis of trust and coordination given our current institutions and their failure to adequately address our polycrisis, you know, we can start to embrace ecology and understand the intersectional cross-jurisdictional nature of these crises, whether that's water abundance, food security, fire management. These crises don't really care if they have no notion of a city municipal boundary, a county boundary, a state boundary, a federal boundary. So consequently, the current ways that we've organized our institutions, our governments, and our programs, policies, responses really don't map to how these crises play out on planet Earth. And with that in mind, I think that there's an opportunity for us. I know there's an opportunity for us to define our future together, and a positive future vision that can inspire the resources to grow capacity and catalyze more coordinated community action. So, ultimately, I'm very interested in exploring alignment and coordination for a regenerative future. Regenerative and regeneration is also having a moment right now. It's a little bit of a buzzword, but ultimately, I think of regeneration as the opposite of extraction. Regeneration is that we're giving back to a place, and that could be regenerative culture and community, that could be regenerative agriculture or land management practices. And I've been exploring over the last, since last summer, a new weaving and convening initiative called, tentatively, the Bay Delta Trust, seeking to improve coordination across our bioregion to increase regenerative investments in the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento, San Joaquin River Delta bioregion. So that looks like new place-based models of governance and collaboration to protect and steward our home and improve the quality of life for all here in the Bay Delta. And just to sort of think about how that feels, I'd like to use a couple sort of nature-based metaphors or analogy. Redwoods are one of our keystone species here in at least in coastal Bay Delta bioregion. And you might know that redwood roots are very shallow. There's no really deep taproot from a redwood tree. It only goes 6 to 12 feet down. So you can see on the left, when the tree turns over, the root system is very shallow, and alone, a redwood tree can be pretty unstable. But redwood trees rarely fall over. And why is that? Because they are in groups, they're in systems, networks, redwood forests with intertwined root systems, literally holding each other up and sharing nutrients. So I think that's a beautiful analogy of where we're at, needing to find each other in networks of networks to hold each other up, people interested in doing the good work for regeneration. So that's something I think a bioregional weaving effort can do. Also helping us flowing together. Watersheds, are areas where all the water drains into a larger river or body of water. Individually, all these little networks of tributaries and streams are all traveling in different directions, but they start to flow in the same direction into these larger pathways, and that move very quickly. The current of these larger river systems can be very, very strong. And I think that that's another great analogy of how weaving together existing efforts can really demonstrate coming together for a unity of direction and purpose. So hopefully a couple inspirational analogs in the natural world of what a bioregional weaving effort can do. I want to share a couple ideas about what bioregional weaving could look like. Um, there's a lot of already good work happening, whether that is local governments doing restoration work or climate adaptation, community resilience work. There's all kinds of practitioners doing restoration, regenerative work, community gardens, community groups. It's really inspiring when you think about it. But these efforts are really, there's no story about how all of these efforts are helping in our home. It's also difficult to sort of get a sense of where they're happening or where they may not be happening, where extra capacity is needed. So one of the things that we're exploring is a community learning ecosystem to research and convene the various actors and allies across the bioregion to develop a cohesive picture of not only the present, but our past, where we came from, who was here 500 years ago before colonists and settlers came to the area. How were they living? How has the land changed over that last 500 years? And what's happening now from a strengths perspective and also from a liabilities perspective? And where might we want to go into the future? And that, I think, could really create a tapestry of regenerative projects, both improving our ability to support existing projects, but also building capacity for new projects where we see there might be opportunities or gaps. And ultimately, there's an opportunity for us to develop collaborative funding and governance models to support this tapestry of projects and to really start to demonstrate what a new model of bioregional coordination could look like to address the series of crises that are faced that we're facing in our institutions are really failing to address at the scale that they need to be. And I want to respect the good work that's happening again, but I think we all recognize that we need to be doing more faster and in a different way to be able to really have some kind of faith that we're making progress on everything that's coming down the pipe. Donella Meadows, amazing systems thinker, in 1970s came up with a notion of bioregional learning centers, helping people and cultures develop and express their own capacity to solve their own problems, consistent with their own needs and within the ecosystems around them, or with the ecosystems around them. I think that's a beautiful notion of what we're talking about here. And I just put that there as another way to think about what a bioregional weaving initiative could look like. And there is work happening around creating bioregional learning centers in other parts of the world. There's great work happening up in Regenerate Cascadia. There's some awesome work happening out in Casco Bay, Portland, Maine area. So I and others on this call are looking into how we do that here. So just a couple more quick thoughts on the Bay Delta Trust area. It's difficult to sometimes the challenges feel so great that it's hard to know where to start. And so picking a couple focus areas has felt important to me. These are three areas that I've been thinking about because of just the importance of water to all life, for example, and certainly food, but also in the Northern California fire and across the West, fire is increasingly a risk that is a lot of money is going into a lot of attention, but there's other solutions, other responses that can help to move the needle on some of this fire response and forest management from a regenerative bioregional approach that I think could be helpful. This is not all the potential focus areas, but somewhere to start as a hypothesis. There's a lot of enablers that I think can help move this vision forward as well. First and foremost, really recognizing the indigenous wisdom and leadership that still exists in Northern California and the Bay Delta bioregion. So growing those relationships, calling those folks in. I'm doing work myself to learn and support, be a good ally. And I think that that's just a critical piece of a new model. If we want to move forward, we need to learn from the past and bring forward the incredible wisdom that's already been in place for a long time, and helping to support a good quality of life for people and the land. And obviously, the sort of education, economy, and culture, these are really critical aspects to think about as far as a new bioregional vision for society. So just kind of wanted to put that out there as some of the focus areas for this work moving forward. And some of the specific priorities, I think a lot about community as the bedrock for this work, relationships, connecting with each other. As we do that, we'll be talking about asset mapping, but also community activation opportunities for us to be together in place. And I'm going to turn to Lewis Fox in a minute to share some of his inspiration around this idea of gathering together in nature. And I have a vision for a bioregional Congress where we adapt or adopt a 100-year vision for the Bay Delta bioregion. And then as we're doing all this learning and we get into the asset mapping piece, which we'll talk about after we take a break and do some breakout groups, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to be storytelling about bioregionalism, about our home, about how the ecological sort of regenerative approach can bear more fruit and be just a different way to live together. And that could look like field ecology trips, digital media and information commons, a digital twin, a lot of opportunities for storytelling. And ultimately, this is all about, again, regeneration, building capacity for more projects on the ground, healing the land, advocating for better policies where we can and need to, and marshaling resources and finances to invest in projects and people and communities in our home. And once again, I think one of the real big pieces here that could be helpful is inviting anyone that wants to and doing the hard work of outreach and engagement to listen to what people care about in our bioregion, what quality of life means to them, in order to develop a 100-year vision for our bioregion that can help be a guidepost, a North Star to orient our activities and help prioritize what some of the initial short-term and midterm steps are to achieve that vision. Okay, thank you all for listening to that. That's going to be sort of the end of the first spiel. I just wanted to share a little bit about how I'm thinking about bioregionalism. And I want to now turn it over to Lewis Fox to just share a little bit about something that I've been talking about asset mapping, and we'll spend a little bit in a minute on that. But also been really wanting to bring people together, and Lewis just sent out a great email to his community about an inspiration he has, and part of this work for me is holding up the good work of other people and showcasing what other folks are doing in our bioregion. So, Lewis, you want to share just a little bit about sort of what you're excited about? And I know it's a nascent idea, but I think it's a great example of what we could be doing together.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's super informal. It's super nascent. Just sent this out 2 days ago, and it was really a follow-on for I had a nice 50th birthday party a couple weekends ago, and people really enjoyed the gathering. And some of the theme of that gathering was for people to bring their gifts, to bring things that they love to do that also serve others, and find that kind of ikigai idea of, the confluence of things you love to do that are beneficial to other people, and to participate and gather that um energy in a container of, in this case it was just a party, but people seem to have a lot of good responses to it, and they wanted to do more parties. And so then I kind of mated that idea with um something I'm passionate about, which is becoming more of a bioregionally literate person myself. And to I guess one of the things we did at the party was, in the morning some people went out and did some foraging, and did an honorable harvest of some nettles, and then we cooked some of the nettles, and it became part of some of the food for the party. So the idea of doing that kind of outing where we're becoming more familiar with our place, we're learning places where there is a potential for a symbiotic relationship to be built. And so this idea of kind of a bioregional explorers club, what kind of was born. And I know that the word explorer has a colonial potential problem, being having a colonial history, but I think the idea is to really turn that idea of going out away from your home and exploring and kind of sampling other places. This is more about kind of exploring your relationship with your
Mm.
place. And yeah, so the idea is a group that gathers. It's like a hiking club potentially. Some of the things we could do would be tracing ridge tops of certain parts of watersheds or waterways. It could be, Skillshare, learning about how to make different foods that are becoming available, how to do honorable harvest with it, so you're not wiping out your local stocks of, and have a good relationship with things, learning from indigenous elders in the area, learning doing historical walks. It's just a kind of way of gathering with each other around something that we'd all like to be getting better at anyway. And so this stacked functions of weaving the social networks, and becoming more and more literate and familiar with our place, felt like, oh, this is, who wouldn't want to do this? I want to do it. I just like to, also hang out with the 10 people I want to hang out with too, and meet new people. So this idea is it's the kind of thing that's drawing me forward, and I got some good responses from that email. So I'm encouraged to understand more. I mean, looking at those maps, Lawrence, was helpful, because the bioregion writ large is, I think, far too big to be doing, trips around. So I'm thinking maybe the understanding the boundaries of the local watershed for our area is even more, and having also understanding the kind of the tribal maps of, you know, the original peoples from here, and maybe narrowing that focus a little bit. But yeah, and that was a great presentation, by the way, Lawrence. I really enjoyed it, and it was well thought out, and it's a big thing we're trying to contain. And yeah, I think the just this having a sense of curiosity and fun and exploring and documenting what we do, and having that go into some way of uh sharing that, and having an archive where we're becoming more and more familiar of our place and getting a dimensional experience of it is what I'm hoping to do.
I love it, Lewis. Thank you. Yeah, it was just a joy to see you send that email out. A few other folks and I on the call, you included, have talked about kind of field ecology trips, getting out, and I just think there's so much opportunity for us to yeah, learn together, have fun together. This needs to be fun. This needs to be engaging. It needs to meet our needs. There's a lot of work that's necessary here to address where we're at, and we need to find ways to sort of like meet our other needs for social engagement and laughter and nourishment. So love it, Lewis. Thank you. And I think it's also a good segue. I wanted to just take a couple minutes and do a breakout room here. The next segment, we're going to be talking about something called asset mapping, which is a way to understand about our home through a process of research and cataloging. Um, Asset mapping is focused on the strengths of a place, but I think we also have a sense of where some of our places need help. And as been thinking about bioregionalism, I've been thinking about home a lot. Peter Berg was one of the original bioregionalists. He created a nonprofit in San Francisco, actually, called Planet Drum, that just celebrated their 50th anniversary. And Peter Berg talked about re-inhabiting place. And so re-inhabiting our place, redefining home. What does home mean from a ecological perspective or a bioregional perspective? So with that in mind, and as kind of a little bit of a teaser for the asset mapping piece, I would love for us to get out into this breakout room and share two things. This is a kind of a framework that I've seen about asset mapping. As far as your home, name a favorite place and a problem space. So a favorite place, and that could be, and a place could be sort of your backyard. It could be the park. It could be a restaurant, whatever connects you to your home. And then a problem space, could be, that could be, there's littering that happens here. We have a Superfund site or whatever it might be. And I think that just that simple rubric gives us a lot of information to learn about our place, but also each other's place. So we're going to do breakout rooms. There'll be 4 people each. We'll do 10 or 15 minutes. And so I'm just going to trust that you all can facilitate that yourselves. Again, in your home, favorite place, problem space. And if anybody feels like taking notes on your call, kind of on the fly, that'd be fun. I would love to hear just a little bit when we get back in about, we'll say 12 minutes. So each person has about 3 minutes. Sound good? All right, here we go. All right, welcome back. Welcome home. Can I get a couple sort of popcorn sort of highlights? Anything that you're particularly touched by that someone shared? Shout it out.
I'll go. Hey, so this is Scott. I live in San Francisco. My co-conspirators were Kent, Libby, and Kevin. A lot of K sounds. I felt a little exclusion, I gotta say, with that coming from my name. But I had Scott, so I was close. I was aspirational. One thing that came up interesting. One of the folks lived in Mill Valley. The other folks One of the other folks lived in Palo Alto, and both sort of brought up the historic redlining of adjacent neighborhoods as ones that are negatives. Marin City for the person in Mill Valley, and East Palo Alto for the person in Palo Alto. And I just thought it was interesting that was sort of the sort of historical nature of some of the negatives as it relates to the bioregionalism conversation, the history of the area. Lawrence, that you've kicked off. So I could get into more detail, but I'll save time for other people's readouts.
Thank you.
We didn't exactly have enough time to hear all of what Nick was saying. Just
apologies.
Unfortunately.
I may have cut you a little short.
That's okay. Another time.
Well, the other three of us had a common thread in talking about transportation without using our cars, and what is great about having that, but what could be improved. But we all had no problem finding some nature place we like near us.
Beautiful. One more share out. Anyone?
Yeah, I'm Matt Bigger here. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Matt.
We had a nice discussion, and a lot of, definitely the theme of places where nature is doing well, and it's a place of personal restoration as well. Seemed to be a theme that we talked about. And Lewis actually shared towards the end, which is kind of a hopeful situation. I think I've studied a bit myself from a distance, which is the conversion of a golf course up in Marin County to a nature preserve, and just kind of the ramifications of something like that, I think, are pretty powerful. So it was nice to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have found a lot of hope, and similarly to the dam decommissioning that's been happening in some parts of Northern California. Just remarkable that we're finally at the point where some of these abominations are coming down, that probably never should have gone up in the first place. So reclaiming and healing our land. Well, fantastic. Thank you for sharing, and I hope that was fun. Since we're talking about home and place, that's a good segue into asset mapping. So I want to talk a little bit about asset mapping and how I've been thinking about it, and what the plan is moving forward as far as how it can help this bioregional weaving effort, and also how it can just help us come together and do more good work. So with that, I'll share my screen again, do another little spiel here, and then we'll have time for conversation and questions to wrap up. So what is asset mapping? Asset mapping is a process that's used to identify and assess the strengths, resources, and capacities within a community, organization, or ecosystem. And really, it's a matter of going out and systematically researching, cataloging, and then analyzing both tangible and intangible assets. And that could be natural assets, human assets, institutional, social, economic, cultural resources, anything that makes a place a place. One of the things that I like about asset mapping is it's a precursor to what's, and this is a newer methodology for working with communities to understand themselves so they can be the generator of solutions. There's a couple of really great impacts or side effects of this, is that if a community gets really involved, they can learn more about itself. A community can learn more about itself and understand the resources it already has to leverage to address some of the challenges that it's facing. It also it's a positive kind of narrative, a strengths-based narrative, instead of the sort of negative framing that a lot of social change efforts can come in with. So instead of looking at a place and saying, well, East Palo Alto, this place is struggling, this place is broken. Asset mapping and asset-based community development would work in East Palo Alto and say, well, what do we have? Who are the knowledge holders? What is working? What can we really leverage to, or how can we combine efforts based on what's already here. And so that approach is an inherently positive one that I think is important for where we're at right now, especially when there's so much disempowerment and cynicism and sort of lack of agency and hope. As far as the goals that I've been thinking about for asset mapping in our bioregion, and it could be, I think it's the bioregion writ large, as well as our smaller watersheds, and there's a lot to learn at every level in the bioregion. But asset mapping can help communities understand the existing assets available to address challenges and capitalize on opportunities and promote resiliency and sustainability. So for me, that looks like first learning, undergoing an intentional process to research and uncover and listen to what's happening locally in order to bring coherence to those existing efforts and assets, and focusing specifically in our case around regeneration, restoration, and community resilience. Over time, using that knowledge base, that information commons, as a way to engage directly one-on-one or in group settings with the important partners and allies across the area to grow the bioregional weaving effort and to do further listening and have a deeper understanding of what's happening in an area. And then also be the source of information that we can start sharing about the good work that's happening, about the bioregional narrative, about the importance of thinking about the entire ecosystem, the entire estuary watershed as a whole unit, instead of the piecemeal way that a lot of agencies and institutions and even nonprofits think about it now. And so that could be, again, storytelling, mapping, visualization, systems modeling. There's so much potential that as we gather this information and put it out as an open resource and information commons for anyone to take advantage of, I think it can be a really powerful asset in and of itself to change the narrative and empower more good work. So starting with research questions is always important. There's so many things we could be looking at, but having a focus to start. And this is where I've focused. One of the things I would love to hear from you all and maybe talk about in our conversation is what research questions you would ask. I've been thinking about the current state of the ecology and health of the Bay Delta estuary, from both a strengths and a liability perspective. And in particular, sort of what are the impacts of past or current land management practices on the health of the bioregion, as well as past and current water management practices. And likewise, what kind of regenerative resilience adaptation activities are currently being conducted in the bioregion? Who's doing this work? Who's supporting the work and funding these projects? And given what's already happening, what are the assets or opportunities that exist that we learn about that we can leverage to further regenerative activities in the bioregion? So this process of learning, I think, will paint a picture of opportunity and also some of the gaps that exist. So the process here, I'm actually going to switch over and just talk about kind of what I've been working on. I've created a prototype of an asset mapping information commons in a database tool called Notion. It's a newer tool. It's similar to Airtable, if any of you know that, but this is now a public site. I'm going to share the link with you so you can all just kind of dig into it right now. I've added sort of the information that I have been tracking over the last maybe year or so of different organizations, agencies, plans, and the idea that this is a collaboration platform for us to be able to add and review and then evaluate or assess information. There are a couple different databases here. There's an organizations database. And let's see, there's 114 different organizations in here now. It's a pretty cool ability to be able to sort of like sort and manage this data. So California Indian Environmental Alliance, it's got a description here, focus area tags, trying to track the location for mapping purposes. That's important. So this is something I've set up. And let's see, we also have organizations, programs, and projects. So one example is the 30 by 30 partnership in the state of California. This is a biodiversity program. which is really incredible work that the state's doing. The idea is gosh, it's 30% of the land in California is conserved for biodiversity in 30 years. Is that the definition of 30 by 30? Is anybody that close?
I think 30% of marine assets also.
Okay, yeah, and that thank you for that, because it is I find myself looking at land and forgetting about the marine or water environments in the bay, but a bioregional approach would look at all of this. So that's programs and projects, and then I've also started to track plans and policies. The Bay Adapt Joint Platform is, I think this comes out of ABAG and MTC, lays out regional strategies that focus on overcoming barriers and identifying factors for successful adaptation. And we've got the plan URL here, so we can go right to the website for the plan. One of the things that excites me about this is that having an aggregate of all the plans that are currently put in place, we could do an LLM and Kent Libby on the call is thinking about this. How can we create a validated data set that we could then query to understand in a given place, in a given watershed, what the current management strategy is, and think about where it might be lacking or what else we might want to be doing, or and also just to know who's working in an area, who has been working in an area. And then finally, there is a people section, which is not really populated just yet. I'm also tracking data portals. So this comes from the good folks in Casco Bay, Maine. Kent and Hayden and I are part of a bioregional fellowship out of the Casco Bay bioregion area called the Cobalt Learning Journey. And so the organizer of that, Glenn Page, shared this with us. And there are national data sets. There's also a lot of stuff here in Casco Bay. But as a way just to track the data sets that are relevant to our region, that we can start to pull from as we're doing visualization or modeling, whether that's in a GIS program or some other digital twin. So this is my, and there's a tag system and a few other kind of elements of this. But this is, I share this as like basically the start of a process or a structure for capturing this information. And I'm slowly kind of building out the documentation. As far as the process, I foresee a few different ways of going about this. One is just empowering anyone to add information to this database if they want. And so actually I see that the form is not up here. So I've created a form that anyone can add, submit an organization project or plan. So if you were an organization that wanted to submit something that's not already in the database, you could do that here. Here's what the form looks like. I want to add an organization, and all the relevant fields are here. Another way that I would love, especially from all of you as we get into conversation, is share your feedback on this idea, feedback on the research questions. What's interesting to you? Do you find this data useful? Is there anyone else we should talk to about this work? And then I think really for the purposes of this group and moving forward, organizing a volunteer team of folks. This is all volunteer time on my part, and really looking for other folks that are interested, either bioregionally, across the bioregion, or in their home, starting to use this as a tool to catalog and map the existing resources, strengths, and assets that are important to you and are important to others. So I have a bunch of different tasks that are here around research and outreach. Research and outreach, data entry, data cleanup, data evaluation, assessment, and presentation. So this is basically, again, the idea is a collaboration platform here. I see this as an open process, an ongoing process. And I would like to, after this call, outside of the monthly community calls that we'll be hosting, schedule additional time for virtual research sessions or data sessions, in-person meetups in place so that we can do a mapping session together. And that's something that I'll be reaching out to more to you all about that soon. But I'm excited to have a place for us to capture this information. Notion does have APIs as well, and there's a lot of tools that integrate this with this so that we can do some visualization and pull this into other systems over time. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to mention though while I was in here is that the asset mapping kind of I also have basically everything from this presentation in this site. The intended outcomes here, the research questions, and the mapping process itself. So this is the last thing I'll share, and then I'll pause and open it up for questions and conversation. The start of a mapping process is really this asset identification, doing the work to collect data to help answer the research questions we have. So that's identification and cataloging of the major assets relevant to, in this example that I shared from Juneau, Alaska, relevant regional development. Once we have kind of a critical mass of assets, we can start to evaluate that data and understand the strengths and weakness, and then just continue the research as sort of that process evaluation uncovers new questions, or we think we need to understand more about sort of water flows in the delta or impacts over time. And part of that evaluation too is also identifying for me who we want to talk to and have one-on-one conversations. I see this as also a part of a discovery process, the research part of a discovery process that can inform one-on-one interviews and discovery interviews with knowledge holders and practitioners to paint a deeper picture of much more than this data could ever do, but to essentially like a stakeholder assessment of sorts to prioritize who we could be talking to, who we should be talking to. And eventually this kind of leads to a comprehensive assessment. And this could be more stakeholder interviews or group sessions where we open this up to local leaders and get their perspectives on the bioregional assets and how it could be helpful to their operations, the linkages between the assets across the bioregion, and the underlying culture of the local community. So this is an emergent process for me when I think about how to move forward on, and I'll stop sharing my screen at this point. When I think about how to move forward on a new bioregional way of living, a new bioregional system or model, a new form of governance or communication or community or decision making. This to me occurs as one way to start that process in a methodical way to learn and just be curious and through that curiosity follow what emerges as far as interest, trends, excitement, or whoever shows up. And so I think that's also something I want to extend to this group. It's an invitation for any of you. If you have an area of interest, if you care about water, if you care about fire, if you care about community resilience, or food systems, how can we use this process and support each other in capturing information, creating an information commons that becomes more than the sum of its parts and becomes an asset for anyone to be able to use. This is, as I mentioned, this is an open site at this point. And starting now, this becomes an open project and for open collaboration. So the last thing I'll share here is I'll follow up with this as well, but kind of how you can help. Check out the public site. It's baydelta.org/commons. That'll take you to the public Notion site. Provide feedback, thoughts on these research questions, or feedback on the data sets, or anything about you've heard so far. And then finally jump in and help out. If you're excited about this, if you think this could help support your work, if you just want to contribute to an effort to learn about our home and start to weave together the different initiatives that are happening to paint a more cohesive picture of good work that's happens as a way to instigate and catalyze more good work, would love to talk further. I can set you up with a guest Notion account so you can get right in there and start adding, editing, reviewing, whatever you want to do. Stay tuned for more details about in-person meetups or online kind of virtual sessions. And if you want to help organize, or if this is something that you'd want to get involved with more deeply, I'm a super collaborative person and would love to have your help. This is my best effort right now to kind of move this along, but it doesn't mean it's the right effort. It doesn't mean it can't be improved. And it will certainly be improved the more feedback I hear from all of you and the more folks that jump in so that we can benefit from everybody's passion and skill sets and time and energy. So this is a starting place. Hopefully, I'm holding space for this conversation and this work. And yeah, my intention is to hold space for that new conversation and invite you all in as you see fit and as you feel inclined to play. So with that, I will pause and I'll stop sharing my screen, and we have plenty of time to kind of just chat. Any feedback you have on this whole thing. I see a couple hands already raised. David, we'll get to you, and then Poyam.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence.
I'm
Oh.
sorry. Do you mind if I go first? I have to run.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
I
Thank you,
just
David.
wanted
Yeah.
to quickly say thank you, Lawrence. It's amazing what you've put together. I think this is really great. There's a few comments, and I'll definitely follow up later. I really like the idea of bioregional learning, because if we're organizing as opposed to like a top-down sort of imposing governance structure, learning is the way to collectively sort of model behavior. And then also, it's amazing what you've set up for us to be able to participate, interact sort of collectively with the tools that you used. One thing I would suggest is for us to keep in mind what we can easily export from Notion in terms of databases in case we want to bring it into another software structure or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to keep that in mind, what might get lost. But I think Notion is a great way to collaborate. And then I know that there have been other efforts in the sort of Bay Area, Bay sort of in Delta area. And then I've been doing some efforts up in the Sacramento watershed. And I'm really curious about how we can combine those efforts. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm excited to see this happening.
Cool. Thank you, Poyam. Thank you for joining. It's great to see you again.
Yeah.
And to Poyam's point, yeah, sort of data sovereignty and governance is pretty critical. So, duly noted. And one thing I didn't mention, but that I'll add it to the stack of tasks there in the contributing section, is there is a lot of prior work, prior research, prior art around this. And so finding other processes where communities have done asset mapping, other sort of knowledge holders, groups that we can learn from is a great research task. So that is basically just something that we can all be having our ears kind of tuned into. If you see this kind of work happening elsewhere across the bioregion and your home, wherever, let's talk about it, because that's a great sort of, there's no need to recreate the wheel if some of this work's already been done. So David, thank you for generously letting Poyam chat before he had to go.
My pleasure, Lawrence. I'm curious in terms of your thought processes and your decision making in choosing Notion.
Yeah.
And also having been up here in Cascadia, the power of integration and weaving the whole bioregional movement is really held very much in the virtual world, where we can connect to one another and share our project. So that, hey, my first question to you is, what kind of decision-making process did you come up with in coming up with Notion and using Notion? And secondarily, did you consider the integration with other bioregional areas in that process?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think primarily it's bootstrap, with all volunteer time and no funding. This is the simplest thing that we could do. I could do to get it set up. Notion does have the ability to export data and API integrations. I don't think this is the long-term best place to house data. But all of this is emergent, and I think we just need to include. I mean, part of my thought process is design principles. And so I want this data to be portable. I want it to be integrated. I want it to be open. And so that's all something that I've thought about. And in my sort of evaluation of different tools, Notion seemed like it was good enough. So there's also just part of my thinking is like sort of be intentional and visionary, but default towards action. And Notion, I've seen some really great Notion websites that can be published. The ability to manage data and publish it sort of in a pretty cool, like user-friendly, almost like gallery format, I think is a pretty slick like interface. So, but this is all, again, my best sort of first pass at this. And so if there's better tools and different ideas, please, I welcome them.
Right.
And the other thing I'll say is that like, I've already sort of in talking to Glenn Page and Casco Bay and others, if this becomes a useful tool, I am more than happy to share this template with anyone that wants to use it. I'm paying $8 a month for my Notion account that allows 100 free guests. So that to me is pretty sort of like for where we're at right now.
It's a low threshold.
Yeah.
Have you been talking up with Brendan or Claire up here in Cascadia with
Yeah,
regards to-
absolutely. Yeah, we're in conversation, and I'm attending Brandon's mapping courses. So yeah, cool. Well, thank you, David. Let's I want to hear from some other folks. I wish I could have saw you while you were down here. I know Anne tried to get us in touch, but let's see. Carrie, were you next?
Yeah, I believe so.
Cool.
So I have a couple of things and you can
Sure.
kind of just respond to whichever one leaps out for you. But yeah, I had concerns as well over the data, like who owns the data and how can it be used. I think many of us are expressing concerns around that. Not like I'm concerned, but just, awareness of it. I guess, how are you thinking about funding this? What's the timeline that you're considering? And just in terms of the bioregional map, you've given one here for us today, which is quite large actually, and it seems to mirror almost like the Shasta bioregional map from Planet Drum. And I've seen like Bay Delta mapped in other ways, such as California's bioregional map, which is kind of closer to the bay and then just where the confluence of the two rivers happen. So anyway, just in bioregional thinking, there is this concept of fuzzy boundaries. So I just wanted to bring that forward as like we don't have to get super rigid about what the boundaries really are as well. So
Yeah.
if you can just respond to any, and one last thing is that you mentioned Cascadia, but I saw that they were going to be working with Joe Brewer on the mapping exercise. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to just stay in contact with them, obviously.
Yeah, I'm part of the design school for Regenerating Earth, and I'm attending Brandon's mapping course. Chris Bowie is actually my co-pilot in that, so we attended the first one this Monday. So for sure on that. Again, sort of as far as the bioregional boundaries, like for me, one of the things that's important as far as bioregionalism is, and Brandon has actually mentioned this, a bioregional boundary should never truncate a water system. And so the way that we currently manage, especially at the government level, we have the 9 Bay Area counties, and then we have the Sacramento area counties, and that cuts off the Sacramento River, which is an incredibly important feeder into the Delta estuary. So I do, and if we're thinking about sort of a new identity, like a place-based identity, we can't have the bay without the Delta. We can't have the Delta without the sort of the tributaries. I think where this goes pretty quickly is kind of the nested kind of conversation within bioregions, like what are the landscapes or watersheds, and the fractal nature of that, and how do we organize around that. As far as the boundaries are concerned, and I'll say this about Notion too, is like, yeah, I think what I'm hearing is the need to really kind of articulate values or design principles in this, and sort of, and I have some, intuitively. So I love being prompted on that. And all of this is just a first best guess to start somewhere. I don't know what makes sense. I shouldn't know what makes sense. We all need to figure out what makes sense as far as how we define our bioregion. So that's the conversation I'm inviting us all into. And so, yeah. And then, as far as Notion goes, it's like, I'm comfortable that we can get the data out. And I think it's good to think about data governance. But I also don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. Again, sort of think ahead, default to action. So yeah, keep asking the good questions and helping us yeah, be thoughtful about it. Chris.
Well, what an exciting day today. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for everything and for everybody who's here. This is great. And want to give a little thread on something is how does this tie in a region that is already pretty progressive and leaders in a lot of these areas. And so this feels like this is an inevitable outcome at some point in the future. And just want to give a brief scenario of something that I'd like to take the lead on to show how something weaves together between different industries and sectors. So Silicon Valley Leadership Group has got its 12th annual Sustainable Summit on the June 21st next month. And they're one of the leading networkers for businesses in Silicon Valley. And for over a decade, they've had a healthy schools lunch program with organic salads and open fresh salad bars in every public school. So they've been partnering with local community groups, CSAs, to the point where Cupertino School District has a 13-acre organic farm that provides all organic food to its school system. So there's a organic farm education center up in the Sonoma County area that works with the California school system that wants to replicate its hands-on training model in a school in Silicon Valley or a district in Silicon Valley. Then Whole Foods has a whole school, whole community program, which is designed around the same kind of outcomes. And California has $400 million on the table to get organic food inside the public school systems. And so the reason why I bring up that's land, that's CSAs, that's farmers markets. It's also the younger you get people's with their hands in the dirt, and you can talk about regeneration, kind of the kiss the ground, the biggest little farm movement, that what are the short-term wins that we could build real funding around and get the idea of a regenerative system of education in the current environments like the one up in Sonoma County, but then use that to leverage a whole new training component in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'll pause there, but that's some stuff that we're working on tonight, Lawrence. We talked about the SVLG summit, and I know some folks at SVLG, and so could we even have a table at SVLG that's kicking off this program concept, and it's getting it out there since it's around sustainability. And so again, between now and June 21st, all those components can come together, and can that be how we can leverage funding, how we can leverage partnering with all the groups in the Bay Area, the whole area, that are already really passionate about this particular topic. So anyhow, thanks everybody.
Thank you. That's a great example of I don't know if low-hanging fruit is the right phrase.
Organic fruit.
A pun, but I think there's a ton of opportunities like that for us to think about. And I just want to underscore that, really holding up the good work that's already happening. This is not ever intended to be kind of to supersede or command and control. This is in service of supporting these efforts and integrating them even more so, and getting them, building that capacity. Kevin.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hey, I'm curious, like, just practical, like adding to Notion with the taxonomy. I'm putting a link in the chat, maybe if you want to open it up and share your screen. Sure. I'm curious, like, how something like this would fit. I sense that it's something that I want to add to the Notion, but I'm not sure if it's a project organization. It's an existing map from the Estuary Institute. I don't know if you can share your screen or not.
Yeah. Let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Thanks. So
yeah, and so you can see there that you can, so like if you click one of the boxes on the left, like nature-based adaptation opportunities, or whatever, yeah, click the box next to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then
Awesome.
there's lots of data, right? And that's just one example. You can see the other things that are in this map. And I have the sense that this is in alignment with some of the asset mapping needs that we have. It not only highlights assets, it does highlight vulnerabilities as well. But from an asset perspective, goes through where are the tidal marshes, where are the different features of the orographic features and other features. And so the question is like, how maybe I don't want to put you on the spot in real time, and it doesn't know how I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I'm like, how would I add this to
No. This
Notion?
is great, and this is
Yeah.
exactly the kind of feedback and conversation to sort of make this the most useful tool possible.
Yeah.
I mean, in my taxonomy, I've been thinking about organizations, because there is an organization behind this,
Yes.
and an organization, does a couple things. It has people
Mhm.
that are part of it. It has programs, or projects that it conducts. And then there is this sort of, it's a subset of a project or program, like a plan or a policy. But oftentimes that's just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
that's at the kind of governance level, and then
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
rolls out into a project or a program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then the fifth piece is the data set. So I
Right.
would actually include the way I've been thinking about it,
Uh-huh.
just to share my thinking,
Yep.
is that I would sort of categorize this as like a project or a program. But
Okay.
the question is like, where is the data from this coming from? And if we
Mhm.
wanted to do a visualization of this data and other data, so say we wanted to sort of overlay, because let's see if I can here
Well, yeah, or just as
yeah.
another example, I was going to post another example in is American Farmland Trust. It's a little bit dated now, but did this amazing study of the kind of a 150-mile radius from San Francisco of the like Bay Area food shed. Incredible data of agricultural land, the productivity of all the land,
Yeah.
showing where how much food is grown of different types. And it's still just an amazing data set of assets in this case of like what from a land use perspective or food, but it's just locked in a PDF as far as I can tell. It's just like an embarrassment.
Yeah. So that's part of the work here, is
Yeah,
like basically starting to standardize this data.
yeah.
So for example, this is
Sure.
EPA Bay Water Quality Improvement Fund. So
Yep.
these are the project sites that they've funded.
Yep.
So for example, like how would we be able to look at
Those together. Mhm.
yeah, and there's not a way to do that. So this does, there we go. So this and this,
Yeah,
so this is where like the notion of a digital twin starts to
yeah,
come, and there are
yeah,
platforms for that. So I
yeah.
think for now, I mean, one solution could be is that we track this as a project, but we note that like,
Tag it as like map or something. Is there a kind of tag in
yeah,
Notion or
right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But
Okay.
awesome practical example of this stuff. And, and I think that also just brings up for me is like, if you've seen cool stuff that has helped you kind of understand what is happening in this area, whether
Yeah.
it's like good work or, challenges, um, this is intended, at least for me, to be a compendium, a resource of those things so that they're more accessible. And over time, we can think about how we might want to make this data play more nicely together.
Hmm.
I think honestly that there probably is a real funding opportunity for us to start to integrate this data, especially if we can demonstrate that integrating all these different isolated data sources helps to make better decisions for different, municipalities or agencies, whatever. But thank you, Kevin.
Perfect. Thank you.
Matt.
Right. It's interesting what Kevin just shared. I just put in the chat too, like yet another map. We can draw from some of the underlying data you've already referenced, but it's another one there. But as I think about the initiative itself that you're putting out there, and thank you for initiating this, and just this landscape analysis, trying to get all the data. I think we all know, and I know Lawrence, like it can just become Yeah, there you
Yep.
go. So there's another one.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe we should pause on that for a sec, because what I see in here is a couple areas that you've talked about, right? Like a food focus, a water focus. So it's interesting that they have two maps in their dashboard tabs at the top that correlate with that.
Yep.
And I think that was kind of my larger point is as you go through the data collection and building the initiative, the more the more focused, the better, right? Because it can just
Yep.
be absolutely exhausting.
Yep.
And there's so much going on in the Bay Area and the Delta. So the continued, I think you're off to a great start. I think the ideas you presented earlier with the different focus areas and stuff, and it's just continuing to like drill down to like not just what's the focus, but what are the goals, right? And then using that as the lens to secure different types of data. And we know, whether it's data or initiatives that are taking place, like 80% of them are probably no good, right? It's trying to find the quality that exists. You met, and so there's the mapping piece, but there's also all the projects and organizations that are doing work in these areas and trying to figure out who are the real players in terms of getting things done, in terms of power, both at the institutional level and the community level, right?
Yeah, that's definitely like kind of the evaluation piece, because I
Yeah.
think it's like, and for me, I had a spreadsheet. I'm always coming across stuff, but I don't really have anywhere to track it. And I'm sure that many of you do too. So like the idea here is like, let's just track things together and kind of, it's like almost like a shared brain in a way for us to be able to sense make. But I totally appreciate the point about specificity, and the phrase that's been coming to mind a lot is like not trying to boil the ocean, even though the oceans are, rapidly warming. But we can't do everything. So yeah, and as I sort of like, I think this is also emergent for me, is just kind of like getting my head around this process, and more specific questions start to come up and focus. But yeah, that's a real risk here, is just trying to do everything and track everything and not getting anything done. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just think great. And I mean, just kind of finish up
Yep.
I mentioned like the quality and what's going on. One of the projects I'm working on, independent consultant, is working with BayAdapt right now, actually. And that unto itself is unbelievably complex. There are so many intersecting, overlapping projects going on. It's really hard to get a handle on even that. And
Do they have a handle on it?
no, I mean, a lot of smart people. No. And there's so many parallel conversations going on. There's so many convenings, and we just we've just created things, so much complexity, right? And I mean, the one thing I'll highlight in those conversations that comes up again and again is the amazing amount of policy and regulations, which generally, I'm sure those of us on this call, we want those strong regulations to protect the environment and everything, but they just constantly get in the way of each other. There's jurisdictions constantly battling with each other. I don't mean to be so cynical, but it's like there is a way through it, and I haven't figured it out for BayAdapt. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, thank you for doing that work, and I'd like to hear more. Cool. Pat, thank you, Matt.
Well, first of all, this is great, this conversation we're having that you've organized. From my point of view, it's like what's been happening today, the discussion and everything, we're in some kind of a dirigible looking over the land at a high level. And I can't grasp all the elements of the conversation. Where I'm at, I'm on the ground, very local in San Geronimo Valley, and since Bay Delta Trust implies water, that you've got this great, wonderful bioregion. To me, is focused on the water flows. I'm on the other side of a ridge, of a hill, where the water in my area here flows into the Pacific Ocean in Tamales Bay. So I'm focusing on, as local as possible, what are all the different mappings I want to create around the boundaries of the ridges that form San Geronimo Valley. And in some way, if I don't look at just water, I'm part of the Bay Delta Trust or the Bay Delta bioregion, to yet to be determined how. I can talk about that, but that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm going to try to map and to understand, like I live, like Lewis has been talking about, we live down the street from each other, getting to know my plants, my animals, just the terrain, what can grow here. I come from, coming into this, into bioregionalism with Joe. I come from a point of view of impending collapsing of existing human political, economic structures, and even our ecologies. So I'm thinking of how are the future here in my locality, how are people going to live and survive on the land? And so I'm kind of coming at it from that way. Just want to share that.
Yeah, thank you, Pat, and thank you for being here. I think Carrie brought up the notion of fuzzy boundaries, that this is all how we choose to organize is how we choose to sort of, we choose to organize in a certain way. So at least we should choose that. We don't always choose that. So part of this is I think an intentional conversation about how do we want to group ourselves and what are important relationships and what is home again. So I said this to Anne, and the rest of the group that we were on a call with earlier this week, is that I'm not as concerned about rigid boundaries. I think we have to hold sort of two frames of mind here. We have to sort of, look at specifics and think about boundaries, but we also need to sort of just hold them lightly. And if we have people that we, connect with that are doing similar work, let's support each other and find ways that we can sort of be along in the journey together. So the intention with the boundaries is not to say you're in and you're out. It's sort of like really just to we already have boundaries that are so entrenched. Let's think about like boundaries, at least fuzzy boundaries that are more aligned with the natural world. And so again, start of a conversation. So yeah. Well, we're at 1:30. Thank you all so much for this. I just really deeply appreciate you listening in and giving great feedback and meeting some other folks that are intrigued by this idea. This is going to be a monthly conversation. So if there's something of interest here, would love to have you come back. I'll follow up with details on that. And I'll also sort of share some thoughts about moving this mapping project forward. And I'll say it again. I'll say it before, I say it again. If you have an interesting idea or something you're passionate about, that relates to all of this, let's talk, because I really want to hold space and support good work within the frame of bioregionalism, and specifically realigning our social institutions and governance institutions with the natural world upon which we depend. So with that in mind, I will say goodbye for now, and really thank you again.